Hey guys, I see that you're on. Welcome. I think I have everyone hey, everyone's muted, but I will get started. I think we had 22 people in the group, so we'll wait till most people jump on in a few minutes. Hey, Kristen. All right, good, Pam. You got the link. I had your email address wrong, so I'm glad you got it. Yay. Oops, you're muted, Kristen. Can you hear me? There you go. You're unmuted. Hey there.
Hey. Good to see you. You got a good turnout right on time.
Yeah, we'll see. We got to feel it's 6. Well, it's right on time right now. So we'll see. I know people are wanting the recording. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah. Give them a few more minutes.
Ding dong.
Ding dong.
Well, and if they haven't used Zoom before, it takes like 60 extra seconds. Not a long time.
Yeah, not a long time. And I saw that I had a bunch of people that jumped in on the Zoom meeting earlier. It tells me when people do that. So I was like, oh, everyone's trying it out.
Yeah, it's what I use for my board meetings too. I like Zoom.
I use it for work all the time, yeah.
I used the free version at first, but that cut off at 40 minutes thing didn't work. Have to step up and pay, but it's, I think, reasonable.
It's reasonable.
And a good forum. Like I like the
Brady Bunch view.
You're too young to know the Brady Bunch.
I know the Brady. I'm not that young. Thank you, but I know the Brady Bunch.
Julie, I feel like we had this discussion.
For those just joining, I'm going to give us a couple more minutes just to populate, just in case anyone's new to the video chat world, and then we'll get started. Oh, and I have a dog that every time, he's quiet all day, and now it's like it's WrestleMania going on behind me. So I may have to put my earphones in just because this is gonna be fun. Can everybody hear me okay on this?
Yep.
All right, guys. We got some people joining in, so I will go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm super excited. As we get going, I have to leave my voice on, and unfortunately you might hear the wrestling of the dogs going on behind me, but if you don't mind, if you're not there already, just to make sure that you've hit mute, which if you're on a computer, it's over on the left-hand side of your screen at the bottom. And then I'll just keep it quiet for those of us who are listening. It's an open forum, so whenever you feel like you want to contribute or ask a question, just unmute yourself. Usually you can just hold down the space bar if you're on the computer, and that'll take care of it for you. There's also a chat feature in here as well, so you can, if you open that up, you can write a chat. I'll just say hi, so everyone sees it, and that's another way you can communicate. However, when I do share my screen, you won't be able to see that feed. I won't be able to see it. So you can see it, but I won't. So if someone does ask a question there, well, I'll either get to it or someone shout it out for me. Okay. If anyone's on a computer, I'd love to be able to see ya. So you can hit that video thing on the left and you'll pop up so I can see everybody. Okay, so thank you guys so much for joining us, me once again. We're gonna get started with the basics of so you wanna put on a race, so you wanna put on an event. Just a little bit about me. I'm gonna share my screen with you guys. What's wrong button? So that you can, come on, full screen. There we go. Why doesn't it let me do this? Oh, here we go. I wanted to share my screen with you guys, but now I'm having a moment because I don't see that feature. But just a little bit about me first is that I have been organizing a big race you may have heard about called the Shark Bite Challenge for about 15 years. I did it the entire time that the race was in existence. Has anyone ever heard of the Shark Bite Challenge? Yes, no, maybe? It was one of the bigger events in the Southeast, maybe even in the country. We hosted for 15 years. I was the lead organizer, and we hosted towards the end, the last 7 years, we hosted about 600 participants. And it was over 3 days. So it was a really, really big event in the realm of, there, does that sound better? In the realm of the paddling world, we were one of the bigger ones out there. So the numbers that equal the size of the Shark Bite would be things like Carolina Cup, Key West, and so on and so forth. So it was a really, really, really big event. We also hosted world-class paddlers that would fly in from South Africa, Australia, et cetera, et cetera. So we did not offer prize money. It was a cheap race. So, and it's something that lasted for a decade and a half. So there's definitely a world of experience there that I think that I definitely could help you with. Along with that race, I also organized a WPA race, WPA national race that was held here in our local area one year, and also some old but goodies, the Sup Splash series, which was a Southern series. I went around the Southeast. There's 2 here in Tampa, and then I was also on the board for calculating the points. Yeah, I was the one that got to calculate everyone's points. A joy to me, because that was just the word. I learned from that one. I won't ever be doing that again. So here we go. I got it. Yay. So looking at this, at my little thing here, going through, kind of what we started with. So whoops, here's where we're at. So with my events and the stuff I've done. So I do have a little bit to say and a little bit to share with you. On top of all of this, I do not own a paddling business. I've owned a little thing where I went around and taught some workshops, but I never really had anything that would put me in a position to benefit from hosting a race, except for the fact that I really like paddling, and I wanted to make sure that the paddlers in my community had a great time at the event that I hosted. So if they don't mind putting your phone on mute, please, that would help. In the meantime, yeah, so we've got, there we go. Can you still hear me? Are we good? Okay. So with all that said, I've got a lot of experience with the races, but I also have been paddling as a competitive paddler since 1997. So with all of this under my belt in terms of race organizers, I also am a customer. I'm a participant. So I get to see it. My name is Karen Tickner.
Nope.
And this is my, you got a little bit of my resume. Jeez.
Hi, guys. I can hear you now. I apologize for interrupting the meeting.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
So yeah, I'm also was a participant for 20 plus years in terms of this stuff. So I think I've got a view of both the customers end and the organizers end. So are you guys ready to get started?
Yeah.
Let's do this.
What have I missed? How many of there is there? Couple?
I'm sorry, what are you asking for? Right now, we've got 14 participants.
Okay,
Whoops. Sorry, what was I lost you? What was that? I lost you. Can you unmute yourself? I can't see you, so that's the issue here. Anybody? Anybody? There we go. Okay.
so did I miss a lot?
No, we're just getting started. So go ahead and mute yourself so everyone can hear what's going on, and we'll get started. So one of the things that that was really important to the organizing the races that I organized, particularly the Shark Bite Challenge that went on for 15 years and had a huge turnout, was making sure that we created a vision for the race. Now, moving forward past this part, don't worry, guys, I'm going to get you into all the good stuff like marketing and sponsorships and all that stuff, don't worry. But right now, we're just looking at creating a vision and creating the basis of your event. So is anyone here planning an event or have an event in mind? If so, what you planning?
So nobody has put on a race here in Arkansas yet, and so I want to be the first one.
Okay, that's awesome.
Well, I say that in our area, Northwest Arkansas, I think they have already participated in a small, maybe marathon type hike, or I'm sorry, run, bike,
Okay.
and up.
Okay, that's cool.
In Little Rock, yes.
Okay, so that's cool. So you'd be the first one of.
In the Northwest Arkansas.
That's awesome. Is anyone else planning anything that I don't know about yet? I know I recognize some names on the list. Anyone want to share? All right. Well, cool. Well, as we move forward, creating a vision is really important too. It's kind of like your mission statement, and making sure you stay with that's really important. Making sure what you want to get out of it's really important as well. So questions to ask yourself as you get started from the very, very, very beginning, like from nothing. And I understand there's some people here that have a little bit of experience, and don't worry, we'll move forward. But what do you actually want to do at your event? So that's a question to ask yourself. They say, oh, I want to have a race. And when I get asked all the time, they say, okay, I want to do a race. They said, okay, what kind of race you planning? You know, because it could be a sprint, it could be a relay, it could be a distance race, it could be paddling around a lake in a circle. I don't know, but it just depends on what you want to do and what you think is going to reach your crown. So why do you want to do it? I think that one is a big thing to think of too, because honestly, especially here in Florida, we have in the spring, we're races every weekend starting at the end of March. There's a race every single weekend. The customers here are smart, and they can read through when they know that the race is just for profit. You know, so why do you want to do it is a big part of the component. You know, we started the Shark Bite Challenge. There's 3 of us that started that race, and we started it because we wanted to bring an event locally to our community. That was something that embraced all paddlers and recognized everybody, you know, for their efforts. So that was why we wanted to do it. It wasn't to make $1 million. It wasn't to get 600 people to show up. It just ended going towards the 600 people realm eventually over time and with a lot of work, but it never was a goal of ours in the first place. It was just about having fun, and people all very much had a lot of fun. So who do you want to come? We will get into this a little bit further. It's really important to understand your market and understand who you're advertising to. So if you only want the elite to come to your event, then you're looking at 10 people. If you're looking to market to the fish and chips, everybody else, me, everybody else that wants to spend money and come to your event, those are the people you need to market to. So just to give you a moment to think about who do you actually want to come, right? So. Any questions that moving forward in that little introduction? No? Okay, moving forward. All right. So what I always encourage is to make sure that you write some kind of mission statement. And you stick to that mission statement no matter what happens. As you know, I'm going to use Shark Bite Challenge as an example all the time, because that is just a huge example and it's easy. But writing a mission statement is like, for example, as our race got older, as we got into the 10 plus years in that event, we had people asking us to offer race money and offer prize money and offer bigger prizes. But our event's a 3-day $50 race. So if we did that, then we would have to bump the price up. And you know, our mission was to bring paddling to our community and make everyone feel welcome and happy. So offering prize money just didn't fit that mission. It didn't fit bring to the community. That's like pay the pros to race, right? So I didn't really want to pay the pros to race. Someone else can do that, to be quite honest. So we did have big time pros and no one made any money on that race. I mean, in terms of the race, the people racing, I mean, we had the best guys in the world. It was incredible. But there was no prize money given to our participants. And you'll hear why for that one later. Get a team on board with your mission. So I had 4 main people involved in our race. It was me plus 3. We all had very different roles. I was the logistics coordinator. I pretty much did everything except for I made everything line up and work, and sponsorships and big organization. I had someone in charge of day of organization. I had someone in charge of outriggers because they're just a world of their own. And I also had, since we were a charity event that represented a state park, we had a political attaché that we sent to all the meetings that we had to go to. So what did you call that? We joked around and call him our political attaché. He was our ambassador that would go and represent us when he had to go to the state park meetings and the civic
Okay, to allow the race.
Yeah, because I was in a state park, we raised money for a state park.
Yeah.
There was a lot of politics involved. So in a very, very small town. So lots and lots and lots and lots of politics. So, and I'll get into that too, because we're gonna dive headfirst into it.
Do you have a write a mission statement example? Because I do not have one, never written one.
I can get there, but like the mission of the Shark Bite Challenge was to let me think of it. I have it in my head, but not in my voice. The mission of the Shark Bite Challenge was to bring a paddling event to our community that supported the average Joe paddler.
Okay, that's what I'm looking for. So maybe we could get some sort of an example sheet on that. I don't know if anybody else is.
I can send that to you later on a follow-up, maybe.
Okay.
Because that's a whole nother department to talk about. But and I can show you some of the stuff, because I definitely, when I get to the marketing class, next time we're going to talk about marketing, I have paperwork for you. I've got all kinds of stuff for you to read and go over and use as an example and all that kind of stuff. And that mission statement is definitely in there. So, and now once you get that mission statement down, it's important that you don't stray from your mission. I talked about that a little bit. Like, we had our mission. It's not going to change. You're not going to take me away from what our purpose is. And I had to make big decisions that involved a lot of money and say, no, that doesn't fit what we do. I don't care. That just doesn't fit what we do. This is more important. The mission's more important to us than any money you can throw at us for your own personal gain. Anyway, whoops, it's sparkling. Okay, so moving forward with your event, pick a name. But be careful, because it matters. We're thinking about marketing and sponsorships when it comes to a name, right? So, I mean, I'm not going to pick on if there's any local people. I don't mean to pick on any names in Florida, but I'm going to pick on people's names in Florida just because that's all I really know. But if we look at, the Shark Bite is another great example. The original name of the Shark Bite Challenge was the Caladesi Kayak Challenge. That makes you want to throw your money at it, right? Like, woo, let's go to that. That's so exciting. I can't wait to go to the Caladesi Kayak Challenge. The Caladesi is the name of an island. That's another state park that's here where we paddle from. And the park was afraid that if we used the term shark bite, that it would mean that people are going to get bit by sharks and they're not going to want to come to the event. And actually that came, and once the management of the park changed, once they got a new park manager, we're like, yes, he's gone. Let's put a shark. We changed the name. As soon as we did that, we ended up getting some funding, some public funding, and on paper, because of the name Shark Bite, and we got money from the Visitors Bureau. Shark Bite would represent that you're getting bit by a shark off the beach. On paper, the Shark Bite Challenge is called SB Challenge. It's not called Shark Bite. just because the market, we got a lot of public funding, and the Visitors Bureau wasn't going to advertise something for us that looked like you were going to get eaten by a shark. So yeah, so that's really important. So those are things to think about. As we move forward, I moved this little thing out of the way. It says a name must be catchy. You want people to remember it. The events that I remember going to in my past and having a great time were things called the Power Paddle, the Bogey and Bacall Classic in Key Largo. We all know things like Battle of the Paddle, Pacific Paddle Games, are things that are catchy and make people really want to go to it. The Caladesi Kayak Challenge, Clearwater Beach Classic, those things just don't make it jump out. It doesn't make it jump off the page, you know. It has to be marketable. It has to be catchy. You do want it to kind of explain what you're doing, even though we did a really bad job of that and saying that we're going to get bit by, clearly we're going to get bit by sharks if you come to our beach. But also welcoming again, which we failed, but seemed to find some level of success with. Not redundant. So you don't want to be like paddling for cancer, a race that paddles to beat cancer. You know, you want to make sure that the name that you have isn't going to continue to repeat itself over and over again. So the name is super, super important. Is there any questions about your name or any comments about your name?
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
Also look and make sure that if you're going to market it, that you want the .com so that you can have a landing page and website for it. And if you're going to use social media accounts, to check to make sure they aren't being used by someone else.
Yay, good point. Very good point. And make sure you can own it. As you go towards your date, this becomes a problem in Florida particularly. Do your research. It's easy to just say, hey, I want to do a race in April. The weather's so beautiful. There's 10 races probably in Florida in April, right? So you need to look at that. You also need to mind the weather. So obviously this time of year, there's people that are up north. It's not an awesome time to go paddling, but also there's parts of the country that are really super hot in the summer. In the spring for us, we get super windy and events could be blown out. So it just depends on the time of year. Give yourself at least a year in advance to get this together. So with the establishment, the Shark Bite Challenge was an established race that I had a timeline for. And I would, as someone who had the date cleared 15 years ago, that has all my insurances, all my permits just down and repetitive through every year, I would have to start organizing the Shark Bite in July. The Shark Bite Challenge was in April. So that was not a year in advance, but all my groundwork was already laid. So that's how far out I would have to start planning. Planning, it becomes a big deal not only to gain permits, because here we have to do Coast Guard permits and stuff, so that takes 130 days out. You got to apply for those permits. But also building the marketing plan. You have to look at different organizations do their budgets differently. So the government budgets are going to be solidified in July. And their budgets typically start in October. They don't start on the calendar year. So you have to know way out in advance. And then the rest of the universe keeps their budget starting on January 1. So it just depends on where you think you're going to market your sponsorships to in terms of how much time you give yourself. So that's a huge, huge, huge mistake that people made. And then people are, we don't do the Shark Bite Challenge anymore. Last year was our last year. And people are still hitting me up all the time so they can take it over. And I had someone ask me last week, I want to do the Shark Bite Challenge. And I'm like, good Lord, son. There's no way. There's no way. You can't do it now because I've released all the paperwork. I've released all the permits. And I got $20,000. We can talk because you cannot pull that off in 4 months. Not an event that big. So you have to give yourself at least a year in advance. Yay, SpongeBob. So date research. Obviously, there's the good old Google search to find if there's any events going on near you or anywhere near you in your area. Yeah, Paddle Guru and Sup Racer are kind of the obvious places to go because those are the biggest lists, but not every race is listed on there. So you do have to do the research between the two to make sure. Now, explain why this matters, because you also need to look at big travel races. There's events that might not be anywhere near you, but everybody goes to. Like, for example, there was a race in Fort Lauderdale, which is 4.5-hour drive from me, that was the week before Chattajack. And they were disappointed that people weren't signing up to come to Fort Lauderdale and do this race. It's because it's a week before Chattajack. Most of the people that will travel to your race are going to be traveling to Chattanooga. So I'm not going to go to Fort Lauderdale and spend $200 on a weekend to turn around and go to Chattanooga and spend $2,000, you know? So it's you got to think about where it fits in the overall calendar if you're wanting success for your race. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay. Be aware of the cost to the consumer. So I kind of spoke about that just a second ago. Yeah, sure, it's a race. People can travel to it. People can come to your place. But is there a race last weekend? Is there a race this weekend? How much is that going to cost the consumer? Also including gas, hotel stays, et cetera, et cetera. Just because it becomes too much. It becomes too much. Could you actually afford to go to 3 races, 3 weekends in a row that require you to drive overnight, each race costing $50 to $100? I couldn't. So that's just something to consider, right? No overlapping in-state races if you can avoid it. And we have that problem here big time. And it splits your market, right? So even though in Florida's a big state, people do travel, so it will split. It'll keep everyone in one region more than the other. People say it doesn't matter, but it really does. Run into that more than once. Okay, location. Anyway, before I move on to location, does anyone have any thoughts about what we just mentioned in terms of race research?
Well, so I'm just wondering, your race was really huge.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering, for someone who's just getting started, that it's going to be a smaller market. Do you think it's possible to plan a race in just a few months?
It depends how much you want, how big, how.
Like a relay race, I don't know, something that would be real simple.
I mean, it depends. I don't know what your municipalities are in regards to your permitting. And I'm going to go through all the permitting as well, because that's a lot of question marks in regards
Okay.
to what they require.
Right.
Yeah. But permitting, insurance, marketing, you really got to give yourself enough time to spread the word. Right. And all that. And if you want sponsorship, right now that their budgets are already spoken for.
I know that's what was thinking too.
Yeah. So those are things that you have to.
Budgets.
Yeah, budgets. Mm-hmm.
Funding.
Mm-hmm. So there's all kinds of stuff to think about, right? All kinds of stuff. And there's a lot that people just don't realize, especially when it comes to permitting. So, but moving on to our location, this will get us into permitting too. Shark Bite, look at that beach. And it looks worse now. It was really like a beautiful beach, but rocky as all get out. So somehow we managed to be successful despite really crappy beach and really crappy name, clearly. So location matters, and things to consider when you go into a location. Open water versus flat water. In certain places in the country, you have a choice. Open water could also be a really big lake. Anything that's really affected by weather, it could, would be considered open water. The reason why that becomes an issue is because people flip over and they can't get to shore, or people fall off their board and they can't get to shore. So safety becomes a major issue when you're going to be in open water. So, and that just brings up more costs and more manpower. So, and not that you don't need, that kind of stuff in flat water, but on a river that's narrow, you're more able to access the shoreline, But if you're going way offshore, there's apps, or in a place where you're far from shore, even a couple 100 yards, that's going to place some risk for safety issues, depending on if your community is one that's really familiar with the water and knows how to swim. So I've had at this event, we do, it's lifeguard regulation that you have a life jacket on board. and we require them to wear a leash, though that is not lifeguard spec. And I can tell you, this past year I had people in the water paddling outrigger canoes, those big 6-man canoes, that flipped the canoes, didn't know how to right them and didn't know how to swim. Nobody was wearing a life jacket. Yay. So even though you as a paddler may be smart and may wear your life jacket and your leash or know how to swim for that matter, when you decide to partake in an ocean sport or a water sport, you have to assume that the crowd, you got to assume the risk for the lowest common denominator. So yeah, this year I had people in the water that couldn't swim. I had a paddleboarder who wasn't wearing a leash, and this was maybe 2 years ago, or no, with 3, 4, whatever. So at one point, a paddleboarder who wasn't wearing a leash was on a race board for the first time in her entire life. Apparently it was some type of badass dragon boater, but didn't know how to swim. So when the race started, she kicked the board, fell off of it, ended up in the water. The board went, the paddle went, and here she is actively drowning. Luckily, we had our safety boat was right next to her and saw the whole thing. But thank God, because that just opens a whole mess of liability on our end. So, but again, she signs the waiver, but she moved the liability onto us because she's a moron. So those are just things to consider. You know, I mean, why would you go paddleboarding with no safety equipment? You don't know how to swim. People. Anyway. All right, so moving forward past that whole debacle, launching. Clearly, this is a really rough beach for people to launch on. Also, thinking about launching, if you're launching off a boat ramp, off a dock, off those kind of things, is it easy to launch from? Is it going to get all clogged up with people? Can you think of a way that it would make it easier instead of saying free for all, everyone down that little dock, bye? Are there ways to organize that to make it smoother? Because, you know, when you do a race, you hope that it's maybe more than a 1-year thing, that it continues. So it's the little fine details that make a difference. If the people think that it's a pain to launch, then they're like, I don't want to go back to that race because I got cut by oysters, you know, or I slid and fell down the boat ramp, or the dock was really hard to get out of. I couldn't get off my board onto the dock, or whatever, you know. So launching is super important. And it's also super important for the safety of your participants because you don't want them hurting themselves. Parking, that's the next step. So if your participants have to, you know, park far away, you need to at least offer a place where they can drop their stuff off so they don't have to carry it a mile. That's something to consider when you are working with your location, big time, which involves the hauling, right? So if they got to really carry it, then they're going to get all grumpy. Then you have a bunch of grumpy people. And that's just, you know, I would, no big deal to carry your stuff, but for some people, they just don't want to. Your starts, your finishes, and your timing. So something to consider how you would start the race, whether you would start on the beach or you'd start, you know, in the water. Looking at this rocky beach you see right here, we did not start paddleboards from the beach because there's more rocks when you get into the water. So, and that's not, and we'd always be like, man did that. Man did ruin the beach and dumped all those rocks. Nature did not do that. But there's a thing we can do to fix it. So we would start everybody in the water. So this picture's taken as people were going in to line up for the race. So we did a water start. We did do a race finish. We finished on a nice part of the beach, which was behind where this photographer is standing, so that we could use chip timers. But I'll let everyone know right now that I did not use chip timers for 12 years of the Shark Bite Challenge. I did 200 people with a stopwatch. So it can be done. It just needs to, you just need to make sure that you can figure out a way that you can get everyone's time. And people are so particular about that. You really have to sort all that. Public or private property. So you can use public parks, you can use public boat ramps, you can use public beaches. There's permitting that goes on with all of it. So when you do use public, there's going to be great parking. There's going to be usually a nice entryway into the water for the most part, or at least some access to the water. But you also have to realize there's going to be permitting, lots of meetings, and probably some money involved. Private property would also involve beaches or resorts or private owned docks or whatever, you know, restaurants and that kind of thing. Again, those are fine to use as long as they're safe and you have the necessary facilities for your people. Private property might make a beach a little less accessible or a dock a little less accessible for those who have special needs, because it's not necessarily required, depending on where you are. All the beaches here do, but not every beach does either. So, but also with those, you're looking at some liability issues and insurances associated with private property. So wherever you go, you're not out of the woods in regards to dealing with liability issues and your insurance. So in my experience, between the Shark Bite Challenge, the WPA Championship, which was held at a private resort, and the Clearwater Beach Classic that I did organize as well for 1 year, was those were all on private property and they were just as difficult to work with. So it just depends. Accessibility, like I mentioned, if you have handicap athletes, it's by law you have to be accessible. Bathrooms, yeah, that's a problem. You need to make sure those bathrooms are accessible, and otherwise, again, you get real grumpy paddlers when there's nowhere to go pee. So just, or what they'll do, they did at Shark Bite, which made me so mad. There were plenty of bathrooms there, but people are too lazy to walk to them, so they would pee in the bushes, which is a major problem because all the rangers are watching you and watching me and blaming me for them peeing in the bushes. And that would become an issue for future events because my participants were not respectful. And thus, why would we have you at our park? So, yeah, so more of that politics. Any questions about your location? Yes, no? You guys learning something? I hope so. So, permits. I thought I was just so smart with this because that's a permit. Okay. So, one of the issues we have around here is we call pickup truck paddle shops or renegade paddle shops that just show up to the parks and throw down an event or throw down rental things, paddle or kayak rental, things, which is not awesome. And there's reasons why that's not awesome. So you can't just show up to a park and do what you want. You can't just show up to a private location and do what you want. So do I need a permit? Yes. The answer is going to be yes. Why do I need a permit? Basically the permitting in those parks and in those public locations are to ensure that, number one, you have the right to be at the park and no one else does. So you hold the rental for that event, and there's not going to be a wedding, there's not going to be a drum circle, there's not going to be a fitness class, there's going to be nothing else going on in that park but you. You're paying for it, that's your permit, this is your event. The also thing about permitting is it starts establishing the levels of liability. Yeah, so you're the organization that's hosting the event. They're providing the space, the venue for you, and then from there, the liability is shared. So, so does that make sense? Right? Because whoever is hosting your event is going to be listed on your insurance policy as an additional insured. So you need to make sure that you have that permit. If you don't know what permits you need, you're going to need to check. You're going to need to go and talk to somebody. If it's a county park, you're going to need to go talk to the county. If it's a state park, talk to the state park rangers, talk to the manager of the park. If it's a city park, you need to go talk to the Parks and Rec District or whoever it is that is in charge of that in order to make sure that it's okay for you to hold the event. And when I organized the WPA Championship, I had to pull permits for the beach on a private beach. I had to pull public permits for a private beach because everyone wanted their hand in the money. So they just want to make sure, again, the liability issue. So if someone is to hurt themselves, they're going to sue you, the organizer. They're going to sue the venue. They're going to sue the city and whoever else is involved with the host location. So those are things you really have to consider, what permits you need. We said city, beach. In Florida, I was required in open water this is the most ridiculous thing, but it makes sense. It makes sense in the long run, but 130 days out, I had to apply for the Coast Guard Marine Event application. And in doing that application, I had to send in very detailed maps and answer a whole bunch of questions in regards to they're going to be crossing major shipping lanes or boating lanes or crossing the intercoastal waterway, blah, 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 blah. And then the purpose of me filling that application out was to purposely get denied, which is so dumb, but that's just the way it works. But the denial of that application would then free up the Coast Guard Auxiliary, which are volunteer Coast Guard kind of ranger guys with private boats that will come and do safety support for your race for free. Hallelujah. So that's part of their little volunteer job. So that's that was awesome. That was really awesome. So that was something that we did do. If you're doing it off the beach, that's something that you have to do, and you want to do anyway because it got you safety boats without you having to pay them out. So event liability insurance, right? The obvious one. So you don't want to go without this, guys. Any place that is going to require a permit is going to make you have event liability insurance, and you want it anyway. Because as an individual that was running a very large event, if anything happened in that event, I'm going to be held personally liable, right? So you want to make sure you're protected in the case of something, right? And it does it's not ridiculously expensive, but it does protect you depending on, and it's all depending on how many people you're going to be hosting. And I did write on here, OIG, Outdoor Insurance Group, is a great source. Makes it nice and easy for you.
I have a question on that.
Sure.
So if I'm already a company owner, is this just an additional insurance that I would add to my regular insurance?
Mm-mm. This is a completely separate, just for your event.
Just
Yeah,
for the event.
Yeah, and you would write your it's an event insurance policy. It is not your rental policy or your trip policy. It cost me I think for my event it was maybe like $700 for 600 people. So it's not a huge investment, considering. But no, you usually, because it's going to cover accidents through the state park, and you can list your business as well as the state park business or whatever venue you're going to be at as an additional insured.
So if I'm partnering possibly with American Canoe Association or something.
The ACA has their own event insurance too. So and they charge it per paddler. So that's another way you can get insurance. They do, if you research, they do offer I think it's $3 a paddler. And you can build that into the race fee if you want to. But I mean, it was cheaper for me to go through OIG because the ACA charged $3 a paddler, and I'm hosting 600 paddlers. So.
Oh, okay. So then,
so
you write your own policy, or did they write it for you?
They write it. They have already written. They just plug you into it. So just like your liability insurance. So so I think that for less than 600, when it was in the 400 range, and this was several years ago, but it was about $400. So you can decide. I mean, if you're already associated with the ACA, that's something to definitely consider. And maybe if you're already a member, then that makes a difference. But it's definitely something to research in that regard. So, good question. Note that all of this is going to cost you money. There's no way around that. There's no way around it. All this is going to cost you money. So, it's something to consider big time. It's something you need to have, so there's no way to avoid it. You build it into your race fee, get your sponsorship dialed in, because all of that is going to cost you money. Depending on where you go. Now, I had it really easy at the state park, and they did not charge me obscene amount of permitting fees. But I know that to be in, with say City of St. Pete, where we hosted WPA, those fees were in the ballpark of $2,000 in terms of permitting. It was obscene, but that's the beach for you. Other events that I've helped out with, because the city, depending on the size of your event, people are going to be crossing streets and stuff. You're looking at police to help people cross the street. You're looking at lighting. You're looking at a noise, permitting, alcohol permitting. If I decide to have beer in a public place, which is why I never did. I always hosted it at a restaurant because they got their licensure and I don't have to worry about it. All that stuff costs you money, and there's a lot to it. There's, I mean, I could pull a permit through a nonprofit, but no one wanted to waste their permit on me, and it's just a lot. So, and every state is different. Every city is different. So, so it just depends. And something that you really need to do some research on. I can help you with it. At the bottom, I was like, make an appointment to talk to someone, right? So, here's the question. What do you want? It's not that simple. Jesus. So you might have visions in your head of what you want, and what you can actually pull off, maybe two different things, right? So it's something to consider, to put in your vision for the long haul. Because again, I had someone else this a couple weeks ago saying, I want to make I want my race that I've never made yet, the race that I haven't created yet, to be as big as the Carolina Cup or as big as Shark Bite. Those things were races in the making. They didn't turn into, huge things, in one pass. It was 15 years of Shark Bite, or however long. How long has Carolina Cup been around? 10? Key West has been around for like 30. Hano's been around for like what, 50? I don't know, something like that. So those huge races all took a lot of time to grow and to get. What I say about Shark Bite is our vision was that everyone comes, and I spent so much money on awards because everyone at the Shark Bite is like T-ball. Everyone won something. So, and it got bigger, and I kept having to buy more prizes, and it got bigger, and I had 15,000 race categories, but that's the way we wanted it, and that's the way it stayed. But our first event was, I'm sorry?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you have resources for awards?
Yes, I can send you some for those. On the next one, we're going to be going through, I'm going to analyze my race rosters, so you can see what our market looks like in terms of who's to be marketed to. And you'll see, I spent, oh my God, so much, but that's us. Not everybody does what we did, because we didn't do prize money, but I think I had like 132 categories. It was just obscene, because as the races, because we hosted everybody. We didn't just host SUP. So we're looking at all the racing kayaks, all the outrigger canoes, the doubles, the singles, the sea kayaks, the sit-on-top kayaks, the 12-6, the 14s, the round nosers, the kids, the six-man canoes. It's just, and then there's genders, and then there's ages, so it just becomes this monster. But, and we had our award ceremony was typically like an hour and a half long. It was stupid, but that's just who we were. So if you're going to come, just bring a snack, bring your sandwich, and prepare to sit through a really long ceremony. Other races do it differently though, and they'll combine race categories. When they don't have enough registration in one, they'll put it into another, and so on and so forth. So, but anyway, deciding what you want, because when we decide what we want, it's going to affect this amount of money you're going to spend, and also what your day looks like, and the time you're going to put into it as well. So the Shark Bite Challenge started off at one race, one length, two categories, men's, women's. That's it. We didn't have any boat categories, any board categories. It was $35. They got a really crappy t-shirt, and I gave them hot dogs at the end. Like, woohoo, here's a hot dog. And then it turned into, that was 35 people in 15 years ago, so 2003, right? And then it turned into this giant monster of 3 days. Like one day, nothing but clinics, one day, nothing but individual craft races, and one day demos and outriggers. So it turned into this weekend monster of awesomeness, but for awesomeness for everyone that was participating, but a whole lot of work for those who are planning it. So that's something you have to consider. Where you're starting from, define what you really want. Like, what is going to be the base of your event? And then grow from there. So don't just start with 3 days of Crazy Town. Start with 2 hours of Crazy Town, and then decide how far into Crazy Town you really want to venture in the future. So
that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Thanks. So organize. So it's one of the things that people that participants really enjoy about races is that they're run well. If a race is a CF, they're not going to continue to come back to it. If they're paying $80 to participate in a race and it's a hot mess, they're not going to continue to come because it's a pain and they feel like they're wasting their money. If you give them a value for what they are paying for, which includes the organization and smooth, and none of the event organizers are yelling at people, then it's going to be a good day for everybody. So to get organized, is your plan SMART? Meaning, do you have specific goals in mind of what you want to accomplish? If anyone is a coach or a goal setter, then you're familiar with this mentality. Are you specific? Do you know what you want? Do you know what you're doing? Exactly. Is it going to be, how long of a race is it going to be? What's it going to involve? How many people are you thinking you're going to have? Get as specific as possible. Measurable. On the outcome at the end of the day, are you going to be able to put a number on your goal? So also, is the success of your event going to be measured in your participants or your profit? It's up to you, really. How will you define a measurable level of success with your event? Pretty much, right? Is what you're planning attainable? Is it actually within reach of what you can physically do and what you can physically commit to? One of the things about the shark bite and the reason why it ended is because it wasn't attainable for us. We couldn't continue it anymore because I started that bitch in July and it was a full-time job come January when I start working on it. I have a job, right? So as it got bigger and it got more involved, I just couldn't commit. So the outcome of this race became unattainable. So is it realistic? Not to sound like that jerk, but to sound like that jerk, if you think you're going to put on a little race in the middle of the country, do you think Danny Ching's really going to come if you ask him? That's not really realistic. But what you're planning, is it realistic to the market that you're marketing to? Will people come to Lake Lanier and do a paddle race? Probably, because it's outside Atlanta. Do you have a community that you can grow on that makes it attainable in the size and a realistic size? So again, if people are approaching me at wanting to be the next shark bite, well, again, having a 600-person race probably isn't very realistic for your first time. It just isn't, So having a 35-person event, completely realistic. 50-person event, very realistic. Be realistic. You're not going to make $1 million hosting a race. Let's be real. Timely. So at the end of the day, not only did you give yourself enough time to get things together and plan it properly, but are you not keeping your people did you create a schedule so your people aren't stuck at the event all day? Do you have a schedule? Do you know how things are going to run? Because that's big too. People don't want to be sitting out all day in the sun after they've competed, waiting to do awards after 3 hours. Let's say they paddled, they're sitting, and now we're waiting around for 3 hours until they get their awards together. That's going to make people upset. They're not going to be happy with that. There's me and that's me and my blowhorn. Yay, my tool of trades. As you get organized, don't hesitate to write all ideas down. I'm a big journaler, so whatever comes to my head, I write down, I write down, and then assess with my SMART goals there if they're going to be smart and realistic to what we're going to do. Prioritize, make sure that you know what is most important to you. So there could be good ideas. Don't be afraid to say no if something doesn't fit into your mission or fit into your plan. As you get planned, consider the investment of your time. I think we all love paddling so much that we're willing to dedicate a huge amount of time. And what we kind of miss out in the production of something so huge is that you kind of forget that you just spent like 30 hours last week at night working on this event. So in the success of your event, don't be afraid to consider the investment of your time and effort. Yeah, because these things aren't easy. Putting these things together is not easy. And again, like I said before, write a schedule. Even if it's somewhat of a schedule. As you get organized, you start thinking of your idea. Think about what time of day you're going to start. If it's a 6-mile race, it's going to take an hour and a half to finish. Hopefully, there's always that one guy in the back drinking beer out of the cooler. but you can always plan like a schedule when your awards will be, so on and so forth. Just so you have a frame You just don't have to have it planned down to a science, but a frame works. As you write that schedule, it's important to hold to that schedule 4 weeks out from your event. If you start changing stuff, and it's gonna get confusing. You know, even if you told them on Facebook that whatever, or you changed it in Paddle Guru, it doesn't matter, they don't read. So once you fix your schedule a month out, you're not changing it. Unless something happens. And you know, heaven forbid weather, heaven forbid you're bringing talent in and they cancel. That stuff happens. But if you can maintain a schedule and don't change it, that's going to help the most. It's also going to keep you sane. So stay on the schedule. Don't change it. Even the day of, try to keep yourself as close to that schedule as you can. Because if you don't, all your participants are going to get angry. And especially when it comes to food. So if you've given them food after the race and you're late in delivering, oh man, they get hangry and they get nasty. Make sure that all your volunteers and so on are trained. Your committee, as well as your volunteers, are trained up before the day of the event. Have a meetup, give them some beer, something, food, coffee, whatever. And someday, a week out, and train them on what they need to do. That way it's one less thing. And when they get there, they'll just go right to work. Right? You won't have to be like, oh, here's how we do registration on the day of massive check-ins, you know. So make sure that they got that organized. Do these make sense? Yeah? Okay. Determining races. I know I'm probably going over, guys. I apologize. I'm trying to get through it as fast as I can. Don't want to leave out anything. It's too good information. Determining race fees. How much money are you looking to make? Right? My suggestion, people will argue with this with me, but to try to make it as affordable as possible without cutting yourself out, right? So you have to consider all your costs, right? I'll get to how you're going to determine that in a second. It's important to determine all your costs, whatever profit or donation you're going to make per paddler at the end of the day. But make it as affordable as possible. As a participant, I can't afford to spend $75 every week in paddle racing. You know, this is obscene. So consider, you know, and it's different in different parts of the country. In Florida, with it being popular, it got in the big habit of being like between $65 and $100 a race. I'm like, who do you think we are, triathletes? No. So that does, you know, granted, these people are spending thousands and thousands of dollars on their equipment. So they can probably afford it, but then there's efficient ships like me that prefers to paddle like a beater board or a beater boat, and I just can't do that all the time. So watch your seasons, do your research, make sure that it's not too crazy for your participants. Race costs are going to include permitting, your insurance, your shirts, right? If you decide to do that, that could be expensive. Usually in the ballpark, I did dry fit on like not name brand shirts, and I would buy, how many did I buy? I think I bought over 1,000 shirts. I think I probably bought like 1,500 to 2,000 shirts, and I was paying like $8 a shirt. So that's a huge cost. I think I spent like last year $4,300 in shirts. There's your awards are going to cost money. So, and the more dialed in they are to your event, the more logos, the more typing, the more trophy-like stuff, the more they're going to cost. So big cost. I think our awards cost nearly as like probably cost in the ballpark of $2,000 at least. So, ooh, yeah. Additional giveaways that you want to do that aren't donated. So if you want to give chips, if you want to give little finisher medals or something like that, those are going to cost you money. Your safety boats could cost you money. I always had friends with boats, so I would bribe them with beer and gas, which isn't cheap in a boat either, you know. So, I would typically have on our big race day with most participants on the water, I had 6 boats. My race ran right along the shore, so we were no further away than 100 yards from the shoreline. So the boats were on the outside of that. Remember what I also said, if you are on a beach location or in one of the Great Lakes or something like that, you can do that marine permit application and get your get the Coast Guard Auxiliary out there for free. My only problem with that for our event, this is like a personal problem. Got a personal problem with those guys. Here we have a huge Coast Guard base, and we have a huge Air Force base as well. So all the guys that were volunteering as Coast Guard Auxiliary are former military, which God bless them, and I thank them for their service. But they were so technical, and they refused. I had to use a call sign on the radio and stuff, like breaker, breaker. This is Karen. This is Shark Bite Karen calling the Angela Gale, the Angela Gale. Like I'd have to use like code words and stuff for these guys, and I just couldn't remember it because I had way too much going on. So I decided to stop using them just because they added more stress to my day. And I'll just hire friends and pay them in beer. So that's what I did. If you use a timing company, that's going to cost you a chunk to change. It just depends. It's the best $1,000 I've ever spent, but you can also do, if the race is small, you can also time it and get your results immediately through something like Paddle Guru. But I couldn't do, timing company will cost you much. And then food costs you a lot of money too. So if you're going to cater it or give them lunch, that costs them money. And I have never had people donate food. So food costs money. So people aren't just going to give you food for 100 people. It's just too much. Maybe they'll give it to you at cost, but they're not going to give it to you for free. Again, don't be afraid to add in your time and your effort. The Shark Bite Challenge in total
We have
costs.
a Walmart here.
Huh? Walmart food.
Yes.
So I would get like fruit donated from Publix, the grocery store. And I was a permitting, I was a freaking sponsorship process that I had to ask like 6 months out. I think we had Whole Foods give us water once. We had Sprouts give us water. I always would go for the water because it was one less thing that I have to deal with, you know, but and they were easy to get. But food never got that. I always gave them good food too. But in total, the Shark Bite Challenge cost just under $20,000. So if that's in total, without sponsorship money and without race. Yeah. So, but that's a huge event.
Wow.
That's a huge event. So I had to add all that in. So we know going in up front, this is how much I was going to spend eventually. Maybe like 19.4, something like that. But we can figure out, I didn't always know that number. So determining your cost per paddler, your total cost divided by minimum number of participants. So once you figure out how much your insurance is going to cost, how much your permitting is going to cost, how much any additional is going to cost, t-shirts, food, all that stuff. Once you get all that priced out, that is your total cost, base cost, because it can go up. It can go up easy, but this is total cost, base cost. Then you divide it by the number of minimum participants that you are going to plan on marketing for. So if it's 35 people, you put 35 people there. And that will give you your base cost per paddler. So that's not what you're charging. That's what your base is, right? So that's the break even. That's your break even number. That's not your, I'm going to give some of my charity or take some for myself, right? So it'll give you an idea. It does, you know, again, when you're looking at, I was looking at, I mean, I'm for the Shark Bite, I'm also looking at not only the event, but 600 people plus their spouse, plus their kids. Because people would take food even though they didn't have a ticket. So I always get so mad, like, don't steal the food. I'm paying for that crap. If you want to buy a ticket, $10. It's not that expensive and it's kick-ass food, but don't be coming up here and stealing my food. And I would get so mad because I'm paying for it, man. It's not free. All right. Any questions about this? Anybody?
Real quick, will this be available to watch later? Obviously, I think
yes, and this, I sent you the link to this presentation too.
Oh,
So,
good,
yeah,
good.
this is on Google.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's there on the email I sent you. There's a link to this, and then this will also be I'm recording it. So yeah, all right. So I think
Cool, thank you.
you're welcome. So that is, I'm
I
gonna
have a question.
sure.
Did you ever increase your fees? Did they stay the same throughout your 15 years? Did you ever increase them?
They increased. We went from $35 to $50 to, 50. No, I think we got up to 60. I'd have to go back and look, but I do believe we got up to 60. Now, here's where it gets really fun and exciting, because we first would have, and it got into a complete debacle at certain points. Because first we had a 4-mile race and an 8-mile race, and it was a really boring race. I mean, I don't know how our race survived, because it's like, we have a bad name, we have a bad beach, and we had a really crappy course. It was literally like go 2 miles down the beach, turn around and come back 4 miles, and then do 2 loops of that for 8. And when the race was smaller, we would do everyone at the same time, basically. Like the 8-milers would go out first, and the 4-milers would go 3 minutes later. And then the 4 miles were finished, 8-milers would continue. But then when the race got too big for that, we split it. So we would do the 4-mile in the morning and the 8-mile in the afternoon, similar like Hano Hano. And it worked out great. But people then wanted to do both races. So that became an issue, because not so much the traveling people, they're willing to throw money at us, but the Floridians didn't want to pay for 2 races, because in order to register on Paddle Guru for those races, they'd have to register for both, and they have to pay for both. So we had to give coupon codes to make it a little bit cheaper for them, because they also were only getting 1 shirt and 1 lunch. They weren't paddling twice and getting 2 of everything. So we had to consider that in our costs. And those damn outriggers would ask for discounts all the freaking time. So I would just be like, God. So they would want a discount because they did both races on day 1, and then want another discount on their outrigger registration for day 2. So it became just a monster when it came to race fees. And I would give them maybe like $10 off at the most. And that was really pretty much taking out our profit to our charity.
Okay.
Just on when they got discounts. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. What'd you guys think of this so far? Did you learn something?
Yeah, I've been running races this will be my 4th year, and I always love hearing from people and learning new things. You always can learn something new, a better way to do something, different way to do something. But I think your most valuable thing to me so far has been to kind of stick to your mission, because you are absolutely right. People constantly are saying, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? Why don't you do this? And you can get really overwhelmed very easy. Mm-hmm. And that's been probably the best thing to hear, that somebody that's real professional is sticking to our guns.
Well, thanks. It was a real big deal to us, a really big deal. And I can say that because we had the same team on, with the exception of one, I did completely delegate. Well, we had a couple things. We also had a fishing tournament that was completely outsourced. I don't know anything about paddle fishing, but I wanted it, so I gave that to somebody to do. And then but the outriggers, they're challenging here in Florida. So I handed them off to, and he was part of the event and part of the big picture, but he was just like the committee member that focused solely on dealing with the organization of them. So they have trailers and giant boats, and it just is a huge deal. So, but everyone, the 3 of us that were involved from the very beginning kept that mission the whole time. And I think it helps that we are all the same people, as much as it burns you out. And there's a lot of races where management's changed over the years a lot. So it kind of fuzzies up the mission a little bit if that's what they wanted to continue. So thanks. Are there any other questions or comments? Yes, Jeff, I will. Thank you so much. I will. Now that I have your email addresses, I can contact you forever. No, just kidding. And I'm adding you to an email list. So, well, thank you so much, guys, for jumping in. Moving forward, if the next 7 weeks, I got a bunch of different topics to talk about. Next week, I'm going to go over marketing and sponsorship, and share with you kind of the secrets of that, because people think you're going to get all kinds of money out of people, and you're really not. So, but ways to work around that and still get sponsorship and have support. And I mean, I got some amazing support that brought some huge things to my event that may not have been a monetary donation, but made all the difference in the world. Like we wouldn't have been the race that we were had those brands stepped up. So, and then also I'll analyze our roster, so you can see what the typical person that goes to this kind of race looks like. Yeah, we got all kinds of stuff coming up. So it's all on the Facebook page. I put it all on the Shark Bite Challenge Facebook page. Obviously, it's where you found me, and we'll go from there. Yay! Thank you so much, everybody, for coming, and I hope you have a great week. Hope to see you again. Hi, guys. Everybody good? Everyone going to hang out with me for a little bit? I'm just going to make sure no one has any questions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.